Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. My name is Jared Pruger, and I'm joined by my good friend Kevin Quigley. Kevin, I'm not sure what your plans are Saturday at noon, your lunchtime plans, but there seems to be a game of significant magnitude happening in central Pennsylvania and University Park, PA.
Yeah, fourth top five matchup of the college football season already, and just massive things at stake. Penn State takes on Ohio State in Beaver Stadium in the helmet stripe game. Don't call it a whiteout, so we're going to put navy shirts on two sections on each side of the field, make it look like the helmet, but we're going to bring that whiteout energy. And just so much at stake. Penn State hasn't beaten Ohio State since 2016. We're 8 years removed from it. And by the way, both teams are trending. It seems like this is the year, right? Last 2 years, Penn State, it felt like they had a chance, but the roster just wasn't at that point, right? The quarterback situation just was never optimal. Drew Aller, and it's potentially not optimal for Saturday's game as well, but Drew Aller's hitting his stride. The offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, he's firing on all cylinders. Tom Allen, the defense hasn't been swarmy and high pressure like it has been in the years past, but it's perfectly adequate. And like you look at Ohio State, Will Howard, maybe not the most prolific quarterback that they've had in most recent years. He's had some incendiary comments leading into this game this week. And then they've struggled. They've lost to Oregon. They've struggled with Nebraska. They've not looked as dominant as they have in years past. And there's just so much on the line. And both teams are undefeated. Both teams are in the top five. Like, the only bad thing about this game is that it's a freaking noon kickoff, man.
Right. The biggest thing, it might be a helmet stripe game, but as long as Penn State doesn't lay a brown stripe in their pants, I think they'll be okay. This is a weird year because it seems like Penn State is might not be favored by the books, but a lot of the national media pundits are taking the Nittany Lions, which seems like the first time that's happened in quite some time. And I think that's, a situation where everything's moving forward for the Nittany Lions and James Franklin, while things for the Buckeyes are kind of trending a little neutral, or they're not necessarily where they've been in the past. This isn't like when they played against Chase Young at Ohio Stadium and that defensive line was dominant. That aspect of it hasn't been, where it's needed to be for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Will Howard is far less likely to move the needle than a lot of these guys, like Justin Fields did, or guys like that. And I think that's
CJ Stroud.
CJ Stroud, yeah. And that's the thing. Like, this is a big game, but it's not a big game. And what I mean by that is, win or lose, Penn State's in a great position. Obviously, with the rest of the season still to unfold. But if they win, they probably have a date in Indianapolis saved with probably Oregon. If they lose, their first round home game at Beaver Stadium and a playoff game.
But that's pending. What does Indiana do if Indiana is able to beat Ohio State later in the year?
Well, and that's the other thing. So, like, obviously, if there's a three-way tie, right? If there's a three-way tie, it goes by some sort of ranking, and I'm not sure where people are going to rank Indiana versus Oregon's schedule versus Penn State's schedule. So that's a factor too. But this isn't necessarily a must-win for the programs because of where they're heading this year. This is a must-win for the coaches who have done historically terrible against top five teams. You get James Franklin against the top five team in Ohio State, and you get Ryan Day against Penn State in a top five game. And I'm going to read their statistics in these games here for us. Ryan Day, 2-7, 29.2 points per game, 34.4 points per game allowed, -3 turnover differential. James Franklin State College, 1-13, 18 points per game, 34.5 points per game allowed, and a -17 turnover differential.
And
that one win.
That includes Sean Clifford's 12 turnovers in that one game.
Yes. Yeah. When he quite literally pooped his pants.
Yeah. Sorry, continue, whatever.
No.
The one game
And
is
that's the
Ohio
thing.
State 2016.
Right. And, obviously Ryan Day's top 5 matchups have come recently against Michigan, and a lot of them are in a bowl game. But for James Franklin, he faces a top 5 team nearly every year. And that's kind of the nature of the Big Ten beast. But they need to win this game. This would go as far as James Franklin is concerned. This gets people off his back. Big game James, right? Well, now big game James can win the game. All right. And it sets Penn State up with another date with the Big Ten championship in a non-fluke perspective. They earned it, right? Now, Ryan Day, the hot seat in Columbus it's starting to get turned up. This is not the Ohio States of old where you're expecting dominance. It's almost like Michigan broke them, which is a really weird thing to say. But losing to that team up north is sacrilegious in Columbus, Ohio. And when that happens, you got a lot of soul searching to do. But for Ryan Day, this game would get some of the naysayers off their back too, but also make it seem that, is Penn State fake, right? But for right now, all eyes are on James Franklin. He's 1-13 against top 5 opponents, and he's got an absolutely horrible record against Ohio State. He needs to win this game just as much as the program does if they want to reach their goals. But again, their goals are still there even if they don't win.
Yeah, and if you're Ryan Day, Ohio State's not won a national championship since 2014. He's been at the helm since 2018. And if you look at not only their performance against top 5s, it's what have they done from preseason throughout the year into what they finished their season at. Ryan Day since 2018 has an average preseason ranking of 3.6 and has only had one win in the college football playoff in that entire time. And he's been in the helm this is his 7th season. James Franklin's average starting ranking is 14th. If you're the 14th ranked team, yeah, do you want to be better than 1-13 against top 5 programs? Yeah, but that kind of checks out. But if your average ranking is 3.6, like you are amongst that top 5 and you're not converting on it. And if you look, Ryan Day inherited a program pretty much near the top, right? Perennial playoff team and just 5-star recruit after
without the portal. Back
with,
when he inherited a great situation.
Yeah. And then you look at what James Franklin inherited and where the program got to. It kind of got reset.
Absolutely.
COVID definitely set them back. Just the COVID season, the 0-5 start, it was very bad on recruiting. And then like the roster had to reset. Well, now the roster's at that reset point, right?
Yeah.
The class that gets recruited for the 2021 year is now juniors and seniors. They're not freshmen and sophomores like they have been. The depth of the team, we talked ad nauseum last year about it, and we're talking ad nauseum this year about like the depth of the team across the board. Penn State for a while was just a 1 deep program. 22 players could compete with Ohio State. Now it feels like 35 to 40 guys are competing with with Ohio State rosters. So it's crucial. Ohio State's coming in a little bit banged up on the offensive line. I think both their starting tackles are out, maybe a guard as well, I think, on their offensive line. Will Howard hasn't looked fantastic. Ryan Day hasn't really had a phenomenal quarterback since C.J. Stroud left. So, yeah, there's a lot on the line on Saturday. Is Penn State still alive if they lose? Yes. But should they win? Or do they? I don't want to say do they need to win, but yes, they do need to win. Like you win, you control your own destiny. You can win out and you can get to the Big Ten championship game where you have a chance to face another top 5 team. And James Franklin has the opportunity to go at least 2-0 in the regular season against a top 5 team, which would be that's a way to get the monkey off your back.
Yeah. Oh, in a big way. And that's the thing, it is a must win because Penn State needs to control their own destiny. This is the first year of the college football playoff. 12 teams, the rankings start next week. Obviously, going in and winning this game, it's a home game. Game day's there. Big noon kickoff is there. Jason Kelsey is there.
Josh Payton.
I mean, this is – yeah, right.
Everybody
but me, it seems, is going to be there. So, it's a great time for this win. And Penn State's playing pretty well. They go into Wisconsin and beat the Badgers with a backup. The defense is playing pretty well. As also, this is Tom Allen, who's not a stranger to Ohio State and what they present. He's not a stranger to necessarily what Chip Kelly presents either, the offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes. But for Penn State, they need to just take care of business. And we talk about that weekly. But if Penn State takes care of business and controls their own destiny, it's going to be shocking what they can accomplish. And in this first year of the playoff, the best way to control your destiny is by winning. And if they can do that and make sure that they leave that game, that field, they get back-to-back home games yet again, get this homestand off on the right foot, leading into the whiteout, the actual whiteout, next week against Washington on the right foot.
Yeah, and it's just play your game. They've shown all along when they don't play their game, they make mistakes and they let teams hang around, or they trail Bowling Green at halftime, or they trail USC at halftime. You cannot afford to have a false start on the offense, like come out, be hot for a drive or two, and then just go into a little mid-game nap until after halftime. Like this is going to be a 4-quarter effort. Play within yourselves. Don't get too cute on the offensive side, and don't get too cute on the defensive side either. It's know what you're good at, and just execute, because the team has shown that when they do execute, they are one of the most dominant teams in the country. The problem is they've not put a 60-minute execution together, and this is probably going to require at least 55 to 60 minutes of perfect execution to get the job done.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing is they just got to go out and execute. And it's something that Ohio State didn't necessarily do against Nebraska last week. But the Nittany Lions went into Camp Randall and handled business with a backup. Now, will that backup be playing? We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back for the second segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the second segment of the Lashing Out podcast, Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin, and I'm trying to jump the gun here, but I alluded to Bo Prabula getting some playing time in the second half last week, where he helped beat the Wisconsin Badgers with Drew Aller out with what seemed to be a left knee injury or knee injury, to be less specific. Is Bo going to be in action on Saturday? And my opinion is yes, he will be, but not as the starting quarterback. Drew Aller practiced on Wednesday. The media viewing window, he did see the field, took contact drills. As far as ball handling was concerned, I think he's going to be all systems go for Saturday. But him being a game time decision is a little bit of a strategic move by Franklin. Little, I gotcha type deal with Coach Day. And I think that's one of those things where it's part of the game. I think Drew Aller's always going to be able to play, or has always been able to play. But you got to keep Ryan Day guessing, just like Ryan Day has James Franklin guessing on what's going to happen with the left side of that offensive line for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, certainly. And you just got to add that extra wrinkle. If you're looking for any sort of advantage that you can get, and if you say Drew Aller is a game time decision publicly, Ryan Day has to actually consider that Drew Aller might be a game time decision. He doesn't know the extent of the injury, and that's part of why James Franklin doesn't talk about injuries, is because A, he's not required to, and B, it's a competitive disadvantage to disclose that. It's also better for protecting student athletes. But if you say that Drew Aller is going to be a game time decision, then Ryan Day has to prepare his defense for both a pro style pocket quarterback and a mobile dual threat quarterback who showed last week that he is also very capable through the air. So it's going to make the defense prepare almost more conservatively, because they have to be ready to stop both. Hopefully Nick Singleton's getting healthier. I don't think we've seen the full Nick Singleton the last couple of weeks. So getting Nick healthy, Drew Aller starting the game, those are two things that you're looking for on the offensive side. Anthony Donko, I haven't heard anything about his status, but Nolan Rucci looked good in his limited action in relief of Anthony Donko last week. But then the question mark on the defensive side is Denai Dennis Sutton did not participate in the media open window. So if his status is in jeopardy, it's also pretty concerning from the defensive side.
Right. Donko did participate with a noticeable limp, according to reports on Twitter. So, I mean, it's also only Wednesday. We have 2 days of recovery. But the biggest thing is Drew Aller is probably going to play. That's not going to be a shock. Same thing with Prabula. Bo's going to be used in the Bo package, and the biggest thing is how is Penn State going to be defended on offense? Are you going to make Drew Aller beat you, or are you going to let the runners let Singleton and Allen beat you? And I think a lot of teams recently, especially USC and then Wisconsin, sold out to stop the run, make the quarterback beat you. And against USC, Drew Aller did beat them. He played one heck of a football game. Obviously Bo does a great job in relief, and they get out of Camp Randall with a win last week. So how is Ohio State going to defend that? This isn't last year's Penn State team. This is a confident, poised Drew Aller. Can he continue that? Is the injury going to mess with his ears or between the ears? And is he still going to be that confident player? And if he is, then it could be a long day for the Buckeyes defense. Now, what receiver is going to step up remains to be seen, but they do need some receivers to step up because they're going to try to stop Tyler Warren. They're going to limit what he's able to do and what he's capable of doing. He will still get his, though. I would still expect to see him in the 5 to 7 catches range, and see what happens there. But there are a lot of weapons to stop for the Nittany Lions offense. Is Ohio State up to task?
Yeah, certainly. And the other thing that comes out of the Wisconsin game last week is that now Bo Prabula has put on tape that he can throw the ball. So when Bo Prabula gets in the Prabula package, teams can't just sell out to stop the Bo Prabula run package. They also have to now respect his arm. He hadn't really put it out there, but now that he's got game action as the number one quarterback for the second half of the Wisconsin game, now he might even have a little confidence throwing the ball because, he starts the one game, throws an interception on the first drive, kills the drive, kills all sorts of momentum, just like an absolute wet blanket on the offense. But he didn't make that mistake last week against Wisconsin. He was fitting it into tight windows. He was throwing balls accurately. And you just have to think like that helps his confidence. And now that's just that's a third, fourth, fifth layer now that the defense has to, because Wisconsin sold out to stop the run, and then they sold out to stop Tyler Warren. And then the receivers stepped up in a big way, or Bo Prabula stepped up in a big way that just made it just that much harder to defend Penn State's offense. And then if you're Drew, hopefully the knee is just tweaked, kind of just one of those bumps and bruises kind of injury. But hopefully you learn that if the guy's wrapped up around your legs, just go down. There's no reason to try and escape the sack. If he's got at least one leg and he's getting the second one in, just go down. It's not worth the additional yards. I mean, it's bring it up, but it's the Tua thing. It's the RG3 thing. You are going to hurt your team more by fighting for that one extra yard or trying to make that one extra hero play. But if it takes you out for the last 3 quarters of the Ohio State game, was it really worth that one extra yard? So hopefully he's learned from that. I think that's probably a growth area that a lot of quarterbacks do have to go, because they are probably the most competitive guys out on the field. And you could tell just how plugged into the game he was still with Wisconsin. He really wanted to be out there. They probably James said he left it up to Drew to go, but was Drew able to go? Maybe, maybe not. But it was definitely more important for him to be healthy for Saturday.
Exactly. And they managed to win the game without him, which is ultimately just as important because they've proven now that they have some quality depth in Prabula. So, the biggest thing, for Penn State in my eyes is they have to just handle business. They can't start slow. They need to be juiced up. And I think that's the other problem in this big of a game, coming out too juiced. And that's a big, it's not necessarily a big deal because I think by the second, third drive you settle in, but you can't come out and over execute. You can't over zip the ball, overthrow the football. can't overplay. You have to stay within your system, both offensively and defensively. And if you stay within the system, you're going to be just fine. And I think that's where Penn State gets in trouble. Is the beginning of the game, they're amped up, they're ready to go, and they just forget to play assignment football. But when they do play their assignments, man, they are a tough out.
Yeah.
Defensively, in the or in the second half, they are an absolutely god tier type defense. It's those first two quarters and really those first few drives that have been getting them. Whereas last year is the first quarter that was superb. It was the second quarter and when the other teams kind of made their corrections. But for Penn State to win this game, Aller's got to play again another great game like he did against USC. And the offense has got to get it going early. They can't afford 3 and outs on their first 3 drives. They have to figure out a way to get points on every possession and figure out a way to send Ohio State home with 2 losses.
Yeah, and you don't want to chase. You don't want to be chasing. You want to at least play from, and this is where, like, if you're in field goal position on a 4th and short like they were against Wisconsin, you got to just take the points. Get up 3-0 because now you have a cushion. You go. The defense goes out there with the mind that they don't have to be perfect. It's okay to give up a field goal in this drive, or it's okay to give a touchdown because the offense has already shown that they can move the ball. But if it's 3 and out on the offense, then you're throwing the defense out cold. Then they're going to run 105 miles an hour, over pursue. Ohio State's going to run some mega screen pass, or Quinshawn Judkins is going to break a 50-yard run or something. You got to avoid that. So I think, you just got to go out and execute. Just be ready to play, but play within yourselves.
Exactly. If they're able to do that, I think they're going to win. And we're going to talk about predictions here when we come back for the third and final segment of the Lasching Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lasching Out podcast. He's Kevin. I'm Jared. Kevin, obviously Penn State, big game for both teams. That can't be understated enough. Again, like I said in the first segment, if Penn State wins, that's great. They control their destiny going to the Big Ten championship, more likely than not. Though it would be very Penn State if they miss out in the Big Ten championship because Indiana runs the table, and Oregon also runs the table, and then there's a 3-way tie, and 2 of those teams are ahead of them.
That would be peak James Franklin.
It really would. Instead of finishing 13th in a 12-team playoff, that would be just top notch. But if they lose, they're still in the playoff if they win out, and that shouldn't be an issue. I have Penn State winning. I have Penn State winning 24, and I have Ohio State with 17. And here's why. Penn State's offense, I think they're going to get a couple of field goals. I think they're, I think they're going to be in position for Ryan Barker to do his thing. They need to finish. Ohio State's good up front defensively, but they're not quite the same as what they have been in the past. And I know that's been a gripe of Ohio State fans because Larry Johnson isn't the Larry Johnson of old, or he's not getting the most out of these kids, or just not recruiting well, at that position. I have Ohio State scoring 17 because from what I've seen from their offense, they have struggled a lot of times. Now, do I think that we've seen everything from the Ohio State offense? No. Same thing with the Penn State offense. But their performance against Nebraska being banged up on the left side of that offensive line leads me to believe that they're not that capable of putting up a ton of points, especially against this defense. I think they're going to get to 17, but I do think that Penn State is going to win and outscore them, clearly, because that's how a win works.
Yeah, usually you have to score more points to win the game. Weather information, just to recap, 56 and sunny on Saturday, so probably low 50s, high 40s, low 50s at kickoff. It's going to be sunny, no rain in the forecast besides Thursday night, so we're good there. Ohio State is a 3-point favorite and is a 45.5 over under. I was typing my score as you were making yours. Coincidentally, we're pretty close. I've got Penn State winning 27-16. Don't ask me how Ohio State's going to get 16 points, but it's going to happen. We'll see. I don't think. Yeah, I'm willing this one. I really want them to win. I really think that this is their best chance to win. And Ohio State's defense looks susceptible to Oregon. And I think Penn State, especially if Bo's playing, kind of plays a similar game to Dylan Gabriel. And if Aller, his additional mobility, as long as he's healthy, is an extra layer that maybe he didn't have last year, or it just wasn't enough to get him over the hurdle. So the additional mobility of the Penn State quarterbacks is going to help. The compromised offensive line for Ohio State's a big help. And, hopefully JT Tuimoloau is not going to get 2 forced fumbles and an interception or whatever he did in 2022 or whatever. That was the game where he just absolutely destroyed us. I don't know how he's still in college, because I felt like he was like a junior, senior for that game. And here he is still on the roster for Ohio State. So, yeah, I know that's a big, like 11 seems like a lot. I just don't know how it's not 11.
Yeah, this is a really weird game. Usually you expect Ohio State to be heavily favored, not necessarily heavily favored because these games are typically close. But, I think there's just more at stake for Penn State. But at the same time, Ohio State's hopes of the playoff kind of go out the window if they lose this game. Are they going to take it to now? Of course, they have probably the 2 best losses of any team if they do lose to Penn State and Oregon. But the validation that this gives Penn State, if James Franklin and the Nittany Lions are able to pull this out, is huge. And it also gives Ryan Day validation as well. But there's still a lot of football to be played.
Both teams have to play as if their back's against the wall on Saturday, right? Because Penn State doesn't have the strength of schedule to maybe recover from this one loss. I think there are a lot of 2-loss teams behind them that will keep them in the hunt. But Ohio State, you go that second loss, and then you have to play Indiana, who looks like a horse right now. I don't know. I don't know if I want any of that. So Ohio State's got to be thinking, like, not looking ahead, but like a win against Indiana is not guaranteed. There's a potential another loss on the calendar for Ohio State. So they've got to play as if like this is potentially their 3rd loss, even though they only have 1. So, but speaking of 3s, if you're watching on YouTube, Jared and I have the new swag from Good Dog Premium Cocktails. You know what else has 3? Good Dog's whiskey cocktails. They only have 3 grams of carbs and 3 grams of sugar, but you could also substitute that with vodka cocktails, which only have 0 carbs and 0 sugar. Good Dog Beverage, they have a Leverage the Beverage program where they donate a portion of their profits from every case sold and 100% of merchandise sales profits to provide for service dogs to people in need. You can go to gooddogbeverage.com. That's good, DOGG beverage.com to find merchandise and the closest retailer carrying Good Dog beverages to you. Yeah, I'm hoping I don't need a lot of Good Dog beverages on Saturday. And I got people coming over at 2:00 on my house on Saturday. So for the sake of some of my friendships, I think I need Penn State to win, because I'll be a wreck. I'll be a wreck if that game is any semblance of 2022 or last year or any of the Michigan blowouts.
Any soul crushing type aspect.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that we do need to talk about some other games. Obviously, my beloved Boise State plays San Diego State Friday night. The game that I'm keeping an eye on.
That's back-to-back Friday night games for Boise State.
That's right, man. The Mountain West doesn't mess around.
An actual
game that I'm watching,
the concept.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
At least they're on the same schedule. Is Duke Miami? Duke has played really, really well. Obviously, they stumbled of late, but if there's ever a team to take down Miami, it would be Duke. This is Manny Diaz against his old school. Miami is playing a formidable foe. We know how that typically goes. And it's at noon.
Sleepy noon game, right?
Yeah.
Miami's always been 3:30, 7:30 at night.
And fresh off beating Florida State.
Yeah.
That to me is probably one of the biggest games of the afternoon. Obviously, nothing's bigger than really Ohio State, Penn State. You got Air Force and Army. beginning of the season, I think everybody had this game scheduled as a tough one, or one to watch was Oregon and Michigan. It'd be interesting if Oregon can handle that trip to Ann Arbor.
That's another 2 time zone travel trip.
That's right. It'll be interesting to see if Oregon handles that well.
Woo Pig
Florida,
Suey.
Georgia, and the world's largest cocktail party.
Woo Pig Suey. Ole Miss has to travel to Arkansas. Only a 7-point favorite for noon road game for Ole Miss. That's another one that's Ole Miss is a team that they cannot afford a third loss. After their season last year, if they have any hopes of getting to the 12-team playoff, they cannot afford that third loss. So that's probably the other game in the noon window to really care about.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. There are a couple good games, obviously, but again, the biggest one, all eyes are going to be on Big Noon. The big eyes for Big Noon.
Pittsburgh travels to SMU,
and so this is obviously, I think people know how I feel about Pitt. I'm not the greatest fan. I do think that Pat Narduzzi is one of the pettiest guys in the world, and that level of petty is admirable. I think it's hilarious. But what is the ACC doing? You have a ranked game and you're putting it on ACC Network. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, because they put Louisville on ESPN.
Right. Which brand identity wise, yeah, that's great. But like SMU has resurrected their program from literally the dead. Pitt is undefeated, and like blatantly disrespected by being like the lowest ranked 7-0 team in history. Put that shit on cable, man. Like, you might as well just put it on ESPN3.
Yeah, that's a tough watch. And then, like, I know we're going to get to it. I'm going to save that one. Kentucky, Tennessee is also an intriguing game. Tennessee is another team who's been stumbling. Kentucky's not had the most fantastic season this year. Nothing says hope like taking on the number 7 team on the road after 3 straight losses. So, and they beat Ole Miss earlier this season. So there's potential there for Tennessee's season to be ruined. And I'm just going to tee you up for it because I know this is where you're going next. Fox. Their 3:30 game is Kansas State, Houston. Why the hell isn't that their noon game? I know you have big noon kickoff. I know you have the lead up show for it, but like, guys, it's
well, and so the other thing too is, what if it's not necessarily looking this way, but what if the Dodgers win? Like, then you don't have anything in prime time. Flex this game to 8:00.
Yeah, it's a top 5 matchup. Top 5 matchups should not. There should be like a law against top 5 matchups being the noon game. Northwestern, Purdue, Stanford, NC State, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Buffalo at Akron, Toledo at Eastern Michigan. And this is like, that's the time slot Penn State, Ohio State gets. Sure, no one else, like, you're gonna get all eyes on it, but it's not fair to college football fans. It doesn't do the Big Ten Conference any sort of favors. The SEC had CBS 3:30 game on absolute lock, and like everyone tuned into the 3:38 SEC game because the Big Ten avoided it like the plague. ACC had nothing but Clemson at 7:30 or at noon, or Florida State at 7:30 or noon. All of those teams were getting primetime 7:30 kickoffs, or they were just playing Furman College and from Greenville, and they're going to put that game at noon. It's just an absolute injustice.
It does suck. Like, this game should be played in prime time and the atmosphere would still be okay. But Beaver Stadium at night is a crazy place to play. It kind of takes that aspect out of it, which is unfortunate. I know they try to avoid night games in November, but now you're going to be playing night games in December in cold weather cities in the playoffs. So, I mean, listen, just play the game, play it at night, and have fun with it. But I do, Kevin, before I go into my parting shots, do you have anything?
No, I kind of got it off my chest today, just now that I had to tone it down. I had to tone it down, but
I'm probably showing restraint.
I love that family clothesline free ad. has "I hate Big Noon Kickoff" T-shirts now.
Yeah, that is top notch.
I might need to get me one of those.
I think we all do. I like personally, and I think coaches agree with this. Like they want the game as early as possible. Like if they can wake up and play at 9 o'clock, that's great. Like whatever. You're waiting all day. You don't want to wait all day. Like there's just too much downtime. Too many things can happen. But for me personally, of all games, my eyes will be locked in on Stonehill and St. Francis, which is going to be great.
Barn burner.
And that's a battle for the NEC and in last place in the NEC. So whoever wins obviously is not last anymore, which is great. They're both winless in the NEC. Life's good. I'll be on the field for that as a replay assistant. Don't blame me if I try to get out of there early and all that fun stuff. Not that I have anything to do with that. But I wanted to get in. So for those of you that don't know me or you're not used to listening to this podcast, which by now you probably are, I am a teacher by trade. During the day, I teach, and at night, I work like Batman and do journalism stuff, whether it's on the radio, whether it's in print or online or whatever. And over the past few days, over this weekend, we lost 2 students. At our high school due to traffic accidents, and one of them involved alcohol. The other one is unsure. And I just want to get this off my chest. I think we all think that we're invincible at times. We've been invincible, or really to this day, we're all kind of invincible because we're still here. If you're listening, you've made it, right? But nobody is truly invincible. Please be smart. Take care of yourself. Don't put yourself in dangerous situations. And if you're ever beyond the point of no control when you're drinking, do not get behind the wheel of a car or truck or SUV. I'm guilty of it. I have a DUI. It's not something that I'm proud of, but it's something that I've learned from. People do dumb things. I always tell people I'm not worried about me on the road. I'm worried about the other drivers. Put the phone down, put the beer down, find a driver, do what you need to do, because no life is worth losing because of stupidity. There's a reason why there's a death date. We're not living infinitely. As cool as that might be to live until we are 203, that's just not going to happen. But your time shouldn't come because of your stupidity or somebody else's stupidity. Make sure you take care of yourselves, make sure you do the right things, and make sure you make smart decisions.
Yeah, certainly. And as somebody who rides motorcycles, nothing scares me more than looking over to the pickup truck that weighs 3,500 pounds, 4,000 pounds. And here I am on a motorcycle that weighs under 400 pounds, and they're just sitting down, looking at their phone and swerving all over the place. So, I encountered somebody the other day driving down the wrong side of the road. Luckily I was in my car, but there was a motorcyclist right in front of me, and he just he nearly had to ditch his bike into the median. So just because somebody wasn't paying attention on their phone, and somehow we're on the wrong side of the median on the road. So, yeah, don't drink and drive, and don't text and drive. Texting and driving is almost worse because you're driving literally with your eyes closed. So
wear a seatbelt.
Yes, wear a seatbelt for sure.
Now that PSA is over, for Kevin Quigley, this has been Jared Frugar on the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. We'll catch you again after Saturday's contest. Thanks for listening.